Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning to all. At the very outset, warm greetings of the day. I, Professor Yashri Dubey, on behalf of Vishish School of Management, welcome one and all present here. I am really honored and privileged with the presence of our expert for today's session, Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, former head School of Economics, DG Vaishnav College, Chennai. I would also like to welcome Dr. Naveen Narang, Managing Director, Vishish School of Management, Dr. S.M. Anas Iqbal, Director, Vishish School of Management, and all the dear participants to our first online guest lecture on getting economic growth back amidst COVID-19 pandemic. We have successfully conducted our first series of 9 online guest lectures during the national lockdown and have resumed with the second series in this Unlock Phase 1. The topic for today's session is such which actually interests almost every segment of the society, whether national governments, local governments, academic institutions, service industries, manufacturing units, entrepreneurs, and the common public. It is a time of great turning, which provides a wide range of opportunities for every institution and individual. Moving ahead with the most important objective of saving lives of the people, now it is time to revive and re-energize our economy, which is actually facing a lot of stress. In today's session, let us all try to find out the ways, means, measures, and the solution for such challenging situation. I really hope that today's session would add some meaning and value to your existing knowledge. Now, it gives me utmost joy and honor to introduce our expert for today's session, Dr. R. Balasubramanian, former head School of Economics, DG Vaishnav College, Chennai. Dr. Balasubramanian has more than 30 years of teaching experience in domain of UG, PG, and MPhil. He is a PhD degree holder along with MPhil and MA degree. Under his guidance, 10 PhD and 40 MPhil degrees have been awarded. He is a recipient of many awards and accolades. To name a few, he was elected as President of Association of Economists of Tamil Nadu 2015-16. Dr. Bala Subramanian has received the Senior Economist Award given by Association of Economists of Tamil Nadu at 34th Annual Conference organized by Vellore Institute of Technology. He is the first recipient of Vishish Shiksha Samman for his outstanding contribution in the education field, and the award was presented by Dr. D.P. Singh, former Vice Chancellor, Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya, Indore. He is conferred with the Best Presentation Award not once or twice, but 9 times. He has credit of publishing overall 80 articles in ISBN and ISSN number books and journals. He has published research papers 125, 125 international in research papers in international, national conferences, seminars, and workshops. I would really like to emphasize on the number 125 number of papers he has published. He has delivered many endowment lectures on variety of relevant and important issues on economics in many magazines and news channels. He has been interviewed by a number of news channels for his expert opinion and comments. Dr. Bala Subramanian has acted as external examiner for more than 50 PhD vivas and has chaired a number of technical sessions in conferences and seminars. So even this detailed study, even this detailed reading of yours do not suffice the great achievement by you. Having said so, sir, I would like to add that we have heard a lot about you from Iqbal sir, about your simplicity, about your deep knowledge, and even deeper interest in sharing the knowledge, your passion for work. So it is really an honor to have you here. Though we missed the chance, we could not meet you in person, able to interact with you, but today having your virtual presence here makes us feel really blessed. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time. Now, moving ahead with our program, I request Dr. S.M. Anas Iqbal to present introductory speech. So please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Very good morning to everyone. I warmly welcome you all at this online guest lecture series under the VISIS Talk and Unlock Phase 1 and Phase 2. I, on behalf of entire VISIS School of Management, welcome all the participants, my profound and laureate Professor of Economics, Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, and esteemed speaker of this sessions, Managing Director, Dr. Naveen Narang, for presiding over these functions. As far as concern of this topic is chosen today, that is getting economic growth back amidst COVID-19 pandemic. It is a very relevant and crucial in today's situation. As per one Financial Express report says, around 6,944 new foreign collaboration with China and 62 other countries took place in last quarter of 2019. Due to adoption of free market principle in China, it has become one of the most world largest high investment locations just because of their policies. But today, as China become the epicenter of COVID-19 pandemic, it appears that its economy is to be going down. But now it is a turn of our economies and our governments to attract some good foreign collaborations to increase in manufacturing industries growth. COVID-19 pandemic uh, may be good means for India's economy or may be bad for the China. It depends on the policies and the attractions of the foreign collaboration and foreign investment. India's manufacturing PMI fell to 27.4 in April 2020 from 51.8 in previous months. It's due to the nationwide lockdown, and another reason, just approx 97% industries fell under the categories of MSME in India, and 59% industries completely depend on the importing of the raw material, semi-finished material, and semi-finished material from the China itself. Now, it is a turn to become a Atmanirbhar. If we decrease our this kind of import of the raw material and others, so we have to be understand so many other factors how our economy had to come up and revamp. Uh, I will not take much more time. It's time to Bala sir to uh, give up his very knowledgeable experience and uh, his analysis. Over to Bala sir.
Well, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Well, most respected, my friend Dr. Anas Iqbal, the Director of Vishy School of Management, the most honorable Managing Director of Vishy School of Management, Dr. Naveen, faculty members of Vishy School of Management, dear students, dear participants, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to place on record my sincere gratitude and my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Anas Iqbal for having invited me to share my thoughts about our economy in the midst of pandemic. Well, before I dwell into my views regarding the economic growth, the impact of COVID-19 on Indian economy, whether India can move forward due to economic packages and so on. Let me pay some tribute to Vishy School of Management and Dr. Anas Iqbal. I had received the most coveted and prestigious Vishesh Samman Purashkar Award from Vishy School of Management in Indore, Madhya Pradesh. And I have been to Indore for so many times, thanks to Anas Iqbal. And Vishy School of Management today is the #1 school of management, not only in Indore, not only in Madhya Pradesh, but also at the All India level. Because of the total commitment, dedication, and devotion given by the students, given by the management, and at the helm of the affairs, Dr. Anas Iqbal, a great teacher par excellence, a great researcher, and he has completed so many UGC projects, ICSSR projects, and so many private companies funded projects and whatnot. And also my own experience with the Vishi School of Management. Several years I attended the international conferences. At the time, the hospitality and the way Dr. Anas Iqbal treated me as if his own brother and family member. And I remember the food served, especially the sweet and other North Indian items, still lingering in my mouth. And also, I had the opportunity of witnessing a very good cultural program. Still, that song, Chiti Aiye, lingering in my ears. So, on the whole, today, if we look at the growth of Vishi School of Management in Vipsar, it is one of the greatest identity of the Indore and the Malwa region because of the total commitment and participation of the students and faculty members. They work in tandem, and the results and the debates and the exposition of students to various programs, even extracurricular activities, sports activities, and so on and so forth. It's a great pleasure for me to be all of with you. Big thanks to Dr. Anas Iqbal. Well, my topic today, getting economic growth back, amidst COVID-19 pandemic. Before I dwell into the details of the getting economic growth back, I would like to narrate the growth stories of India. See, we all started with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru at the helm of the affairs of India as Prime Minister, first Prime Minister. We had the first plan in 1951. At the time, Nehru laid down certain emphasis on agriculture, emphasis on heavy industries and capital industries, and so on and so forth. The first plan was so successful in terms of growth rate. Then subsequently, for obvious reasons, the growth rate of India declined and hovered around 2.5% to 3% between 1951 to 1975. Later on, under Mrs. Gandhi's regime, it picked up slowly. Again, if you look at the growth rate under Mrs. Gandhi's regime, in spite of the fact that Mrs. Indira Gandhi emphasized on Garibi Hatao, eradication of poverty, and social programs to uplift the poorest among the poor in India. And she has laid down the 20-point economic program to take the economy forward during that period. But still, if you look at the GDP growth rate during the Mrs. Gandhi's regime, it hovered around, say, 3.5 to 3.9%. Later on, Rajiv Gandhi came as a prime minister, and he did a very remarkable aspects in bringing IT industry, IT revolution, IT-enabled services, and also he gave much importance to micro, small, and medium industries. And also he gave much importance to tiny industries. During this period, if you look at the growth, again, it went up from 3.9% to 4.2%. So during Rajiv Gandhi period also, the growth rate was just 4.2% or so. So the late Dr. Raj Krishna, a great economist, who termed or coined the economic growth of India during the periods of 1970s and 1980s as Hindu rate of growth, which means the rate of growth of India growing on par with Hindu's population growth rate. So he very sarcastically coined the term Hindu rate of growth and became very popular, that jargon. And later on, in 1991, first time India opened the economy, thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister, then Honorable Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao ji, and first time a very good economic reforms was introduced with decontrol, de-licensing, deregulation, and a complete open up in terms of promotion of exports, reducing imports, and so on and so forth. Now, this kind of first economic reforms by opening the economy had come due to the fact that the Asian tigers tremendously employed the export strategy. The Asian tigers, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South Korea, they showed to the world that through export-led growth, the economy can sustain itself over a long period of time. So based on the Latin American countries' experiences and the European countries' experiences and Asian tigers' experiences and also Japan's experiences, India moved to the LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So the complete opening up of the economy ensured a tremendous rate of growth. And thanks to, at the helm of the affairs, Dr. Manmohan Singh as finance minister, the then prime minister had chosen the right person for the right job. So during Manmohan Singh's finance minister period, we find the growth rate of the economy had moved tremendously or significantly to the level of 5%, 5.5%, 6%, 6.5%, 7%. So the first time that India had experienced higher economic growth rate during the Narasimha Rao period, during the Manmohan Singh's as finance minister period. Later on, what happened, Atal Bihari Vajpayee as prime minister and the BJP, the NDA government also introduced good policies, the Golden Quadrilateral program, constructing highways across India, giving emphasis on social infrastructure, and so on. So Vajpayee period also, the growth rate hovering around 6 to 6.5%. Then came the international shock in 2008, the shock of the financial meltdown in America, and spread to Europe, and spread to Asia. But India withstood. India withstood the financial meltdown in 2008 thanks to very good monetary aggregates and very good Reserve Bank of India monetary policy, and so on. Then from 2008, you find the UPA 1, UPA 2 government led by Dr. Manmohan Singh as Prime Minister. The economic growth of India was very, very tremendous, highest. In fact, we had achieved a 9.1% growth, 8.8% growth continuously. So if you look at the UPA 1 whole period, if you put it on an average, it comes around 8.6%. So it shows that the growth rate of our economy moved steadily due to very good economic reforms and very good economic stimulus packages and very attractive business climate and very good monetary policy and very good export policy and good foreign trade policy and a very good agriculture and services sector policy and so on and so forth. Now, after some time, you find that before the COVID-19, what actually happened. So these are the growth stories of India. And during the first, the BJP government led by Dr. Narendra Modi ji, you find the growth rate was somewhat good in the sense that the first term of the BJP government led by Narendra Modi ji retained around 6 to 6.5%. And later on revised to 5.8%. And the present Modi ji government, the BJP 2, the present BJP 2 led by Modi ji government, if you look at the growth rate of 2019-20, up to Q3 of 2019-20, it was just 4.2%. So before the advent of the disastrous COVID-19 in India, what kind of growth rate we had? It was just 4.2%. And if you look at the last quarter of 2019-20, it was even, very low at 3.2%. So it shows that before the impact of COVID-19 actually started around March first week, and before that you find that the growth rate of the economy was very, very down. In fact, the budget projection of 2019-20 was 8.2%. But what actually we achieved in 2019-20? It was up to Q3, 4.2%. The last quarter of 1920, Q4, just 3.2%. Shows that something happened. The economy, recession started, and the entrepreneurs, the business people felt that the packages and policies followed by the government not conducive enough to move forward, and the market crashed, demand came down. So many, a lot of problems put to this kind of growth rate. And now, why we should talk about growth rate? See, friends, growth rate, economic growth rate or GDP rate is not the only indicator of the performances of any nation or any economy. But at the same time, please remember the fact that higher economic growth always means the robust economy, a very resilient economy, a very innovative, dynamic, forward economy. If any nation has on its board higher economic growth rate, say 7%, 8%, consistently over a period of time. See, the decadal time series data to be analyzed. If any nation comes with, say, 6 to 7% continuously for a decade or so, that country naturally possesses a huge, robust, healthy economy. Therefore, growth does matter, but growth alone does not matter. So that kind of notion you all should aware and know about it. Now, coming to the great concern of the COVID-19, the fiscal deficit during 1920 was 4.6% of GDP, and now the fiscal deficit could have increased to 6% of GDP, and demand weakening was there. So these are the important areas of concern. Fiscal deficit is there, and the budget estimate, the budget projection is one thing, and realization of the budget estimate, budget allocation of funds is another thing. And in the midst of it, you find a sudden, unexpected, unprecedented attack on the world by coronavirus. The entire world, I would say, come to standstill because of the attack of coronavirus. It spread like a lightning and a thunderstorm. So what happened in USA, what happened in European countries, what happened in Asian countries, you all aware that all the nations, even low rate of growth, because the entire economy, the entire economic variables comes to a standstill because of lockdown, a complete total lockdown of the world. So the world production, agricultural production, industrial production, services, output, everything has come down the past 4 months or so because of the impact of coronavirus. So in the midst of this, I have chosen this topic. Can India proceed with economic stimulus packages of rupees 20.97 lakh crore, what we call 10% of GDP? Can this kind of packages take the economy to forward? Can these kind of packages achieve what we call a moderate rate of growth in the coming months or coming years? Does India possess any credibility in terms of realizing and implementing all the funds exclusively created for different sectors to protect the interest of the society and the people and sectors of coronavirus. So these are all the issues I'm going to discuss in my lecture. Well, let me start with the uh, Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan scheme. Friends, rupees 20 lakh crores, it's not a small amount. It's a huge, significant amount because it comes around 10% of GDP. Therefore, one should give credit to the central government for having created so much of funds in order to revive, in order to rehabilitate, and in order to boost up the economy in the coming months or coming days. Therefore, Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, what we call ANBA. In Tamil, Anbu means love, affection. So ANBA also the love, affection to our nation and so on. So ANBA means self-reliant. So Modi ji started with addressing the issue, self-reliant, self-sufficiency, and self-possession of our local products. So you manufacture locally, then market it globally, then market it across India. Let the people of India consume our indigenous skilled local products. Therefore, the basic notion of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan scheme is to make India as self-reliant. That does not mean India should not depend on foreign countries, but in the course of time, India should reduce the dependence because of coronavirus impact. No country will offer so much of packages or funds to India and so much of goods to India. So under such circumstances, we have to work it out the ways and means through which we can stimulate, we can bring certain economic and social actions within the boundaries of our nation so that slowly and steadily India can revive and see the road to recovery and the path to recovery will be achievable. Therefore, one has to salute the central government for having allocated rupees 20 lakh crores as the economic stimulus packages in India. Now, let me see the main objectives of this ANBA scheme. If you look at the main objectives, apart from emphasis on local products, the economy to be boosted, infrastructure should be created, technology to be revived, and more thrust on indigenous technology and labor-intensive technology to be encouraged, and growth-driven system, vibrant demography. So we already have on board the rich demographic dividend because if you look at the growth in terms of age of population, we are having on board 15 years to 59 years, about 64%. So this gives a very good labor force in the labor market, and that would create more output in the economy. So demographic dividend and vibrant demography and creating very good effective demand in the economy. So these are the five pillars of the ANBA scheme. Now let me turn on to the other side of the packages. The Reserve Bank of India alone gave rupees 8.1 lakh crore through various schemes. So this rupees 8 lakh crore will be what we call liquidity of India will increase, and liquidity of banks will increase, and banks will provide more loans to entrepreneurs, small businessmen, medium scale businessmen, even tiny industries, even self-help groups to start and boost and initiate investment in the economy, thereby creating more employment and more output in the months to come. So rupees 8 lakh crore infused by RBI, which comes under the part and parcel of the Atma, what we call Nirbhar Bharat Abhiyan scheme. So we are having sound monetary policy. The repo rate and the reverse repo rate now declined, and very good cash reserve ratio, very affordable CRR we are having, and more liquidity, cash liquidity to the banks. to extend more credit facilities at a lower rate of interest. So interest rate has come down for borrowers. And also you find that the overall picture in terms of providing a good monetary policy. So monetary stimulant packages and monetary instruments and monetary mechanism are doing significantly well with the package of rupees 20 lakh crores. So this apart, let me come to the real picture of our economy. What has happened in the past 4 months? Lockdown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across India. The first major factor affected the economy, what we call negative growth to continue. Presently, if you look at it, barring agriculture, industry, overall we are having minus 27.1%. Services minus 8.1%. And the gross value added across India minus 12.5%. So overall minus 4.4% down in the past 3 months itself. So the GDP, that is why the international rating agency Moody has downgraded the India's GDP and growth rate and the India's growth climate by 4%. Then S&P, another international rating agency, has downgraded because of the fact that the coronavirus impact and the lockdown, subsequent lockdowns, put the economy down. So not even 1%. Now the last Friday GST meeting, the GST Council, what happened? What was the outcome of the GST Council last Friday? They unanimously agreed to the fact that the GST collection, GST revenue, mobilization has come down by 55%. Only 45% mobilization of revenue through GST across India. And if you look at the GST collection in January, it was rupees 1.10 lakh crore. Then February, 1.5 lakh crore. Then March, it came down to 72,000 crore. By now, April, May, it is even 32,000 crore. So you find that the GST rate also come down because of the complete lockdown across India. But lockdown is very essential. Lockdown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because somewhat and to some extent it arrested the positive patients, coronavirus patients, and also the spread, the social spread also controlled by the government of India and states. Now let me turn on to the real picture of the economy. The loan moratorium is there. One of the important feature of the economic stimulus package is loan moratorium. Now, if you look at the loan moratorium, some industries under MSME given 12 months for repayment of principal amount, but interest rate they should pay regularly. Then for some, borrowers, the interest rate and as well as principal amount can carry forward to another 3 months or to another 2 months, say 6 months, up to maximum 6 months, loan and interest payment moratorium. So a mixed response in terms of loan moratorium, but the burden carried forward with the higher amount of incidents when they turn to pay after 6 months or after 1 year to the loan. So loan moratorium is another important feature of the good monetary policy. Then if you look at the impact of credit growth, the credit growth appeared to be insignificant even before the advent of coronavirus. In 2019-20 itself, the credit growth, was just 20%. So 80% for obvious reasons, the banks not distributed credit to the various stakeholders, various borrowers, for obvious reason because the recession was there in 1920. So the whole important issue, the another dimension that the dualism in Indian economy is prevailing right from independence up to now. Dualism in the means organized sector, unorganized sector, regular market, and then the imperfect market like the third rated and the second rated quality markets are there. So in the midst of the dual system of our economy, if you look at the migrant workers, so can we say that the stimulus packages will lead to good growth, will lead to sustainability of our economy? No, because already if you look at from lockdown one period, the migrants issue considered to be one of the most inhuman, most heinous issue across India. Because there was no pre-plan, there was no pre-management. When you look at on March 24th night, the central government invoked the nationwide lockdown without giving much time to all people across India. So what happened in the melee? The migrant workers at the time of first lockdown thought that the lockdown period would get soon over, but unfortunately when lockdown 2 came into existence, at the time the migrant workers across India thought that already they lost their jobs, they lost their livelihoods, they lost their families, they lost income, they were under very chronic poverty, 1 square meal a day, not able to get. So many migrants suffered a lot due to the impact of coronavirus and due to the impact of lockdown. So what happened? They gathered in Mumbai, they gathered in Surat in Gujarat, they gathered across India to go back to the native places, at least to have some food, some survival, and some job. So this is what happened for the migrant workers. Therefore, a sudden, unplanned, mismanaged lockdown put the migrant workers at the receiving end, and that had a cumulative effect on the economy. And if you look at the total migrant workers in India, it stands at 140 million. 140 million migrant workers across India. And Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal, Odisha, and whatnot, the major manufacturing states are having it on board large chunks of migrants who work in the construction industry, work in the road bridges building industry, work in the hotel industry, other industries. They are all daily wages. Remember, migrants are not beggars. Migrants never seek alms from the people for their own survival and their families. But unfortunately, due to the lockdown, they were, if you look at the entire experiences of migrants, more than 90% of the migrants suffered for want of food, for want of shelter, for want of transport. And they walked on the roads, they walked on the railway track. You know what happened on May 8th? 16 innocent, ignorant migrants were instantaneously and mercilessly goods train ran over all of them in a sudden way. They were asleep because they walked 100 kilometers to their native places. Unfortunately, they slept on the track and the goods train moved them. So a lot of stories and lot of happenings on migrants issue that put down the economy, because 40% of our GDP comes on account of the dedicated and devoted works of the migrants across India. And the informal sector, if you look at it, 90% of the total workforce in India comes from the informal sector. Out of 450 million workers who are employed in the informal sector, 140 million are migrants, whether temporary migrants or permanent migrants or fast moving migrants and by virtue of marriage migrants and whatever you call it. But migrants, a group of workers who are what we call the richest source of labor of our nation, we lost during the pandemic. So this is the first negative feature what actually happened. So within the 140 million migrant workers, 100 million workers, migrant workers were completely destroyed in terms of their livelihood and so on. So they now returned back thanks to various special trains and other things. Later on, lockdown 3, lockdown 4, the transport arrangement, other thing, after heavy loss of the migrants' livelihood, the government of India realized that something to be done. So states and central government now already ran several trains to take them to native places. Now, what is happening now? Friends, we are not having any accurate, perfect data on migrant status in India. The Central Statistical Organization, CS, is not having perfect data on the migrants' position. Census of India 2011, and every census we are having data. But within the census happening once in 10 years, but within 10 years, you find lot of migration taking place, rural out migration taking place across India. So unless or until the state government makes a survey of the total migrants who have come from various states to make their livelihoods in their respective states. Now, first of all, if you look at it, Uttar Pradesh government for the past 15 days or so addressed the migrants issue in a very effective way. They surveyed, they mapped out, and also they chalked out a good strategy to provide employment opportunities. And the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Swamiji, went on record by saying 1 crore job will be created to the inflow of migrants. So this is a right step, and Madhya Pradesh also creating good employment opportunities for the migrants returnees. So the reverse migration and the migrants were getting some sort of solace from the respective state government. Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra also mapping out the skilled migrant workers, partially skilled migrant workers, semi-skilled migrant workers, and so on and so forth. So now only online survey and allowing migrants to have a database and their families and Aadhaar card and so many things are there. So it's a right step in the right direction, at least to address the plights of the migrants during the pandemic and so on. Then if you look at the other important loss in terms of economic lockdown, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you look at it, the unemployment rate in 2016-17, the unemployment rate was just 12%, and came down in 2018 Q4 and 19-20. We had 8% unemployment and so on. But now the unemployment rate across India stands at 27%. 27% unemployment rate. And different states having different unemployment rates across India, obviously due to the retrenchment, and companies and business establishments were closed, and laborers, employees and staff, even IT employees were thrown out of job. So all kinds of miseries, unemployment, fall in income, and fall in economic livelihoods across India, irrespective of caste, community, and religion, happened during the economic lockdown, and exclusively due to coronavirus impact. So how to address this system? How to address this issue? This is a major issue, unemployment, the disguised unemployment, educated unemployment, rural unemployment, non-farm employment, unemployment. So in the midst of it, you find what kind of infusion, Manrega, the only solace, the government of India additionally earmarked a fund to the tune of rupees 40,000 crores to help the Manrega job. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Program. And the minimum working days should be increased from 100 days to at least 150 days or 200. But the wages per day given to the Manrega cardholders increased from rupees 182 to rupees 202. But states like Tamil Nadu paying 286 rupees per day per person under Manrega job card holders. And different states, Madhya Pradesh might be giving more, Uttar Pradesh might be giving more. So different states having wages given to the migrant Manrega cardholders more than the national wages, average, rupees 212 per day per person. So Manrega is the only solace now, 100% job in rural India going on, and Manrega work for agriculture and non-agriculture and rural development and so on. So this, I think, has provided some sort of relief, some sort of, say, oxygen, infusing good oxygen to the Manrega workers. But it will take much time unless or until all the states together, because the budget allocation of Manrega stood at 60,000 crore, now additional 40,000 crore infused. Now, how does this Manrega job and the rural development will take place? It's $1 million question to the $1 million problem. But considering the revival of the economy, the first address is the Manrega jobs. The second issue is agriculture. Now, if you look at the package given to agriculture, the PMGKY stands at rupees 1.70 lakh crores to address. Then 3 lakh crores under Kisan Credit Scheme. Then agriculture, marginal small farmers, agricultural laborers should work from dawn to dusk and cultivate different crops to increase the food grains production of India. Fortunately, if you look at the food grains data for 2019-20, it stood at 295 million tons. And fortunately, if you look at the current supply and storage of food grains under Food Corporation of India, it stands at 70 million tons. And the way in which the PDS system, public distribution system, and the way in which the migrant workers given 10 kg of rice or wheat, some says 5 kg of rice and wheat, and 1 kg of dal or pulses, and so on and so forth freely. All this supply came from FCI. So agriculturally, that's what I said before the COVID-19 impact. Agriculture in Q4 of 2019-20 was better when compared to other sectors' growth. So now the agriculture package, if you look at it, a very broad stimulus package, and thanks to the Finance Minister Nirmalaji's tranche 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you look at it, the emphasis totally to increase the agricultural production and thereby increase employment opportunities in agriculture, and all-round activities of agriculture should be there. But if the southwest monsoon fails or the northeast monsoon fails, because agriculture totally depending on the rainfall. If the rainfall fails in this year, naturally agriculture will fail in spite of big stimulus package being accorded to the agriculture and rural sector in India. But still optimistically, we have to move forward by assuming that the southwest monsoon will be good in North India, and northeast monsoon will be good in South India, and overall the rainfall should be very, very good and quite adequate enough to cultivate for 3 seasons of agricultural crops and so on. Now, if you look at the other side of the packages, I would like to give you the important areas of concern. Now, suddenly the government came out with one nation and one ration card. Interstate portability, which would help the migrant workers and so on and so forth. Then one nation, one agricultural marketing by amending the Essential Commodities Act. Now the Essential Commodities Act been amended, allowing pulses, cereals, uh, onion, potatoes, oil seeds, everything can be stocked now. There is no limit for the farmers to stock, process it in the godowns and store it properly and then sell it to anyone. There should not be any middleman or agent because the Essential Commodities Act now been amended to allow farmers to have a fair price for their produce. So this, I would say, a good step in the right direction of amending the Essential Commodities Act. Now coming to the industrial side, whether the economic packages for industries will take the economy forward, whether India can attain a moderate rate of economic growth after some time due to the stimulus package for industries. Look at MSME. MSME now completely redrawn, redefined, and the services manufacturing now being clubbed. And look at the micro industries investment threshold limit. Look at the medium industries threshold limit. Look at the small industries threshold limit. So everything now been hiked and the turnover limit also hiked to allow the MSME stakeholders to get loans at a very fair rate of interest, then invest in a good, optimistic, profitable business project, thereby create good employment and good business opportunities, create more output and sustain the business. So 3 lakh crore been exclusively allotted for MSME and the commercial banks and other banks now open their doors for MSME to take the loans for investment, WhatsApp and even Mudra scheme and other even self-help group scheme and other scheme now to boost industrial activities in the rural areas. This is happening. Therefore, friends, that the industrial packages are quite good in the sense that one cannot expect much relief more than what actually given because a lot of tax concessions, a lot of GST, even late payment for GST, the waiver of interest and waiver of late payment fee now been given. So all these things are there. So you will see that in the coming months, there will be all-round industrial activities. Now the other side of the coin, where the ANBA scheme, address the issue that for the, let me turn on to the collateral loans, collateral free loans for MSME, another good opportunities. Government of India guarantee the banks should not have any fear about the repayment of loans and interest and so on. Then you see that the tranche 1, if you look at it, 5.94 lakh crore infused. Tranche 2, 3.10 lakh crore infused. Tranche 3, 1.50 lakh crore infused. Tranche 4 and 5, 48,100 crore infused. And earlier scheme like PMGKY, 1.92 lakh crore infused. RBI, 8.01 lakh crore infused. So totally more than 20 lakh crore been allocated for different aspects. So on the whole, that the growth strategies and the working of various aspects will be there. And the only thing I personally feel that labor laws, even your state, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, why during COVID 4, lockdown 4 itself, what forced the Madhya Pradesh government, Uttar Pradesh government, Gujarat government to amend the labor laws, barring the Child Labor Act, barring certain labor acts on women and women employees, the remaining acts now been completely revamped to suit the industries and thereby exposing the labor class under the clutches of the employers. Now, why I am very aggressive, I object to the amendment of labor laws by certain states in India. Labor laws was amended that would put the labor exploitation at the hands of the employer, because previously, if you look at the labor laws, minimum 8 hours of work. Beyond 8 hours of work, labor should be given incentive. But now, due to the amendment, the minimum working hours for laborers extended to 12 hours per day. And it is a sheer exploitation. It is like a Karl Marx Das Kapital, surplus value created through exploitation of labor class. Why the hell the labor should work extra 4 hours without any payment of wages, without any incentive, without any perks? It is profiteering. Where it goes to the hands and pockets of the entrepreneurs and employers and the business people. So why the laborer should be exploited? Pandemic is there. Why sudden change in the labor law? Do you think that the laborers are quite enough in terms of energy to work for 12 hours? Do you think labor will produce efficiently the entire 12 hours? Previously, we had 8 hours per day, even the 8 hours, exact efficiency labor force or average comes around 4 to 5 hours. But now 12 hours. It will be a very daunting task for the labor force, and more laborers will be exploited without creation of more wages. If the companies come forward to provide double the wages, triple the wages, and it should be option to the labor class. You give option to the labor class. Those who are capable, those who are having good energy to work 12 hours, earn more. But others are not willing. Let them go to their houses, take rest, and come back tomorrow to work. So it should be optional, not forced, but backed up by legislative, executive, extra 4 hours work wages, double the wages, triple the wages. Then it will be attractive. Therefore, friends, that the labor laws amendment not quite appropriate, unwarranted, unwanted, untold. And now the central government woken up because of media exploited this issue. And now a lot of instruction given to the states, and the states like Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat yet to reply on this issue. So the other important issues like exports, now exports has come down, declined by 35% in March itself. Now it is almost 60% decline of exports. Only traditional products we are exporting. And the demand for exports also has come down. And the demand for imports also has come down because the entire nation now under lockdown. The entire economy now under standstill. So the imports exports issue and foreign trade issue also not good. But if you look at certain economist opinion, Dr. Ashima Goyal, Professor of Economics of IGIDR Mumbai, also a member of the Pradhan Mantri Economic Advisory Council. Yesterday, she went on the media and aired her views that package of rupees 20 lakh crores and 10% GDP, quite good, quite welcome. But at the same time, these packages are not made out of iron. It has to be fine-tuned. It has to be tailored appropriately to suit our rural economy so that the economic stimulus and the economic incentive, industrial revival, agriculture revival, services sector revival, IT industries revival, export revival will come. So it has to be fine-tuned. That is our statement. Then secondly, that we are having foreign exchange reserves to the tune of 500 billion US dollars. Foreign exchange reserves to the tune of rupees 500 billion US dollars. So this, again, Ashima Goyal went on record by saying that almost 70 to 75% of this reserve comes from borrowings, the external borrowings. And she pointed out very clearly that unless or until India attracts huge kind of foreign direct investment for business projects, we can't make any fancy claim about our reserves. So this is another setback in terms of the foreign exchange reserves. Even though we are having 500 billion US dollars, but still, then the question of attaining 5 trillion economy, when, where, how, and we can achieve the 5 trillion economy, because the projection is 2023, then revised to 25, at least by 2030, can India achieve 5 trillion economy? So packages are there, but it has to be distributed. It has to be given to the doorsteps of the labor class and other people. Society should observe the packages. Industry should observe the packages. Micro, small, tiny industry should observe. Village industry should observe. Farmers should observe. See, these people observe the packages, then slowly the revival will be there, supported by good monetary fiscal policies, tax reform, tax concession, tax holidays, so on and so forth. So a lot of issues are there. The relationship between central and states, because states have borrowed much and they address the health issues on account of coronavirus. But now states are under a severe debt. All the states, including Madhya Pradesh, having lot of debt, lot of loans, lot of borrowing. So how the states now can come out with the debt unless the central government provides a lot of relief funds. Now the GST, the central government says as per the GST agreement between states and center, if any states, the revenue collection through GST fallen by 14%, then the central will compensate the next 5 years. And that will be over by 2022. But now some states are having 47% fall in the GST collection. Madhya Pradesh having more than 30% fall in the GST collection. Whether the center will compensate the fall in the revenues of GST collection. So a lot of issues are there, friends, on account of the COVID-19 impact. So I think time has come for me to conclude. A lot of issues on account of the severe impact of COVID-19. It has disturbed the entire life of India, and how long it will take, and how many years we have to wait, how many years we have to see the robust economic growth back. It will take at least 1 year if everything goes well. And a very good package, no doubt. We have to support and encourage and command the 20 lakh crore package, because only USA has given 13% of GDP, and Japan has given 21% of GDP economic packages. So on par with UK, Italy, France, Canada, and so on, developed countries, India given 10% of GDP, no doubt. But the stakeholders, states, union territories, central government should work in tandem, should work out very good strategies, and also the banks and the RBI, lead banks, cooperative banks, central cooperative bank, non-financial institutions, so non-banking financial intermediaries and other stakeholders, and the people of India, especially labor class and the entrepreneurs, business class, should work in tandem, should work uniquely to move forward the economy to a better level. So unless or until that happens, it is quite difficult in the near future. The future is bleak right now, and the WHO and ICMR now forecasting that the peak has not come in terms of the positive spread of the coronavirus. It will come in August or September. And some newspaper today carries a report that in mid-November, we are going to see the peak of the coronavirus. So it will be another stimulus package now awaiting for central government to announce, apart from 20 lakh crore package. So I don't know, unless vaccine is invented, unless vaccine is tested to the animal, then to the human being, unless vaccine is experienced with a good effective measure, this virus cannot be, eradicated or what I can say, controlled or managed in the coming months, coming days. So unless medicines and thorough new kind of device and mechanism to control, only wearing mask, social distancing, keeping up social distancing, also eating home food, and also washing hands and legs regularly, at least 10 times in a day, will definitely make people to be away from the impact of coronavirus. So, okay, friends, I have discussed in detail about the various issues. Now, I think Dr. Anas Iqbal sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, shall I now invite our friends, research scholars, students of the Vishesh School of Management and others across India to raise any queries or any doubts or any suggestion? Quite welcome, now open to all. Thank you so much. So before I wind up, I would like to thank profusely Dr. Anas Iqbal sir, the director of Vishesh School of Management, the managing director of Vishesh School of Management, Dr. Naveen sir, and other heads of the department, other faculty members, particularly my students' friends, BBA, MBA friends, etc., for the opportunity given to me today. Thank you, one and all. Of course, 1 hour given, but I used to speak for 2 hours, 3 hours, touching upon the various issues, because one issue of the economy itself will take me in a classroom 2 hours, 2.5 hours. But now I have touched upon multiple issues. Now open to all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for putting things into perspective for us. You have very beautifully covered each and every element, whether it's about migrant laborers or Manrega or Atmanirbhar Bharat or unemployment. So I really like the way you addressed my labor law amendments. That was amazing, sir. So once again, thank you so much for such an engaging and enriching discussion. Now we are open for Q&A round. If anybody has any queries or wants to interact with the sir, may unmute his mic and ask.
Any of the participants have any question, they can just unmute their mic and ask.
So I think we have received so many messages of appreciation. That was such an amazing discussion, but I don't feel there is any question from the participant side.
Yes, there is no question as of now.
Any questions? At least in the chat, you look at the chat box, any questions?
Yes, I have looked at in the chat box, sir.
It's not necessary that only the participant should ask.
Sir, there is one question in chat box. What is India after COVID-19 recovery?
Pardon?
What is India after COVID-19 recovery?
Well, I addressed that issue. Recovery, it will take 1 or 2 years, depends on how soon we eradicate or we manage the coronavirus and how soon we open the economy 100%. Even though the unlockdown of one saw some states created a good amount of openings of certain sectors of the economy, but still long way to go for the entire nation to open up the economy 100%. Still transport not running, non-availability of transport, non-availability of other modes of transport, even railways, even the airways only operated in a very skeleton basis. So the after the recovery, definitely India is having good resilience. Our macroeconomic aggregates, our monetary policy sounds very well, and India is having good basics. And under such circumstances, that after 1 year, the recovery will be there. Initially, the rate of growth of GDP will go by 2%, 3%, then 4%. If everything goes well, by 2022, we will achieve around 5% growth rate. Then 23, 24, we will achieve around 6 to 7% growth rate. So it is only a temporary bottleneck. This coronavirus impact is only a temporary phenomenon. We have to be very positive and optimistic that once recovery takes place, then you will see overall, movement and overall recovery and overall promotion of industrial activities, export activities, agricultural activities, service sector activities, and so on and so forth. More FDIs will come, more business outsourcing will come, BPO projects, etc. And you all will get employment. And Dr. Anas Iqbal will conduct campus interview. You all will get employment opportunity by April itself. Coming April, you will see that the Vichy School of Management will conduct so many campus interviews and you will get employment. So only 3 to 4 months setback and bottlenecks are there due to severe impact and due to lockdown. And after recovery, India will move forward and there will be a sustainability of growth after 2023-24 and India will be path to recovery. Not only that, India will be victorious and India will be sustainable in terms of growth and other parameters. We have to be hopeful or optimistic.
Sir, there's another question.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
The question is, what organizational value will sustain post-COVID?
What?
What organizational value will sustain post-COVID?
Right now, as I said in my lecture, agriculture looks promising. Only the water availability and the inputs availability, if these two combine together, definitely agriculture will emerge as one of the promising sector after the COVID-19. Then secondly, the most promising packages announced by the Government of India on industrial development, on industrial activities, stimulus packages, definitely industry activities will take the economy forward. So first thing is agriculture, secondly industrial development, and combined together amidst agriculture and industrial development, you find the growth of service sector also. So the immediate primary response, because Punjab is doing well, Haryana is doing well on wheat production, and other states doing well on various food grains production. So cereals, pulses, plus coarse grains and millets will be the main crops of cultivation across India. So we'll see slowly and steadily our primary sector will get developed, then the industrial sector and the services sector together will take India to the highest growth pedestal in the coming years.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Gautam ji, my good friend, Dr. Colonel, a very great army officer, he was the director of IIFTR, where I attended my first international conference, a very great scholar, a very disciplined academician, and a very knowledgeable person. And I met him many times. his daughter in Gujarat, I think, your daughter in Surat or Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad. Yes, I remember. So, a very great, good friend of mine is here. Good morning, sir. You are welcome. You can raise your question or any observation.
At the moment, I'm sitting at Ahmedabad, trying to see Etwal and Rang Valley. I'm sitting here. I got a question. It may not be, you may not give answer today. In 2004, 1914 scenario, World War One, then coming to 1939, Second World War, from France and England, we switched over to USSR and USA. Later on, 1991, Russia and USA continue. As per the Times, 1985, people may not remember, they predicted that after 20 years, India and PRC, Indian Republic of India, and People Republic of India, China will become the superpower. Cutting short, now 2020 is supposed to be World War III. Whatever the reason could be, let's see the casualty. Today you are 4 lakh, tomorrow you may be 4 crore, then you are crossing the Second World War and First World War. It's just like a war. It could be psychological war or any war or biological. So my point is, will India or China become superpower now or not? That is my question. And no answer, immediate answer is not required, but it's a food for thought as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Gautam ji. India is already a superpower, no doubt, on par with China in terms of defense power, in terms of defense technology, science and development, research and development, know-how, invention, even patenting rights and whatnot. So India is superpower, no doubt, but whether economically superpower or not is a $1 million question to the $1 million problem. And you have narrated very beautifully during the impact of world wars and what happened in France, what happened in China, and what happened in European countries and so on. Sir, I would say my personal opinion is that China after 1980 picked up the growth rate to the level of 10% because of the implementation of effective market taxation and decontrol and deregulation of the economy. The centrally planned economy after 1980 put down the planned or command economy under the carpet and put forth the globalization and marketization. China able to recover, and China showed to the whole world, the only country in the world showed to the whole world that the 10%, more than 10% GDP growth is sustainable. Only China did it for 30 years. And India also did it during UPA 1, UPA 2 regime. We had 9.1% economic growth, 8.8%. But now it's a different story, and it will take a lot of time. The impact of COVID-19 is so serious, and India will be definitely economic superpower by 2030. It will take another 10 years or so to make India a superpower on par with China and so on. But the demography is good. Young people are there. We have to make use of the demographic dividend, because the age group of 15 to 59 is around 64%. You have to provide employment. You have to provide skill training. We have to give good job climate, and the labor law should be very conducive for them to work and so on. So it will take another 10 years. Definitely India will be the economic superpower, but inequalities will be there as we increase our superpower, economic superpower. Inequalities are also there between rich and poor. Poor will become poorer and poorer. Rich will become richer and richer. And now, right now, sir, take it from me, 1% of the rich people in India having 30% of our income and assets. So this is a very, I would say, the bleak feature of India in terms of inequalities. Very big gap between rich and poor. So that will be there, because on the one side, you move the economy forward. On the other side, definitely poor segmentation of population will be affected, and inequalities of income and wealth in terms of distribution will be there. But I congratulate you for having aired. Your opinion is very candid that India should become superpower, economic superpower. But defense superpower, India is the #1 in the world.
Thank you very
Time for
much.
India.
We met at 8 a.m. on 8th of August 2008. 8th month and 8th day when China was having Olympics over there. We met there in IFCR.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Just to add one point, to become a superpower, 3 elements are required. There are many elements, 3 major elements are required. Psychology of the country. If we have the psychology like Japanese and Germans, and of course Germans are Aryan, that is a different issue. If that is there, and secondly, you are economically very strong, many more factors are there, which are natural sources also. And the third is the army. Now today, army, just for everybody's knowledge, we are strong in the land, we are strong in the air, we are not strong in the water. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Allowing me to
Thank
share
you, sir.
my.
Thank you.
There's one more question, sir. In
Yes,
chat
yes.
box.
Proceed.
Just a second, sir.
Proceed, sir.
So question. Yes, sir. Just a second, sir. So how do fiscal policies support the economy?
Right now, the fiscal policy pushed to the least ground because monetary policy has taken over the fiscal policy. Because monetary policy, in terms of, say, the repo rate and the reverse repo rate declined, interest rate declined. Even SBI offering today personal gold loan at the rate of 7.5% per annum. Can you imagine 7.5% per annum personal gold loan? So housing loan interest reduced, and the cash reserve ratio is reduced, and infusement of more liquidity in the hands of the banks, and more credit dispersal now in the offering, and monetary policy taken, monetary instruments taken a pride role in protecting the interest of the people during the coronavirus. But fiscal policies like relaxation is there in GST, and the reduction of GST is there in some point. But what about Baroda tax, the Paratha tax? Day before yesterday in the media, the Paratha tax of 12%. Then Government of India clarified that Partha, what you say, I don't know, in Tamil Nadu, Baroda tax, 12% of GST. So the poor people are eating Baroda now and then in the hotel. Has to pay 12% of GDP. Imagine if Baroda cost 30 rupees, how much they have to pay extra in terms of what we call GST. So 12% of GST, the Baroda tax. It is very high tax. Someone clarified that only frozen Barodas will be taxed 12%. Across the food table in the hotel, 5% tax. So these kind of elements within the GST you find certain food products, certain non-food products having a very high GST, putting pressure. So the fiscal stimulus, the expenditure should be reduced. The government should reduce the non-planned expenditure. Government should reduce the unproductive expenditure. But public debt is very high because of the coronavirus. The 20 lakh crores, where does it come? It comes from various international sources, from the World Bank and other sources. So you find that the borrowing limit and the borrowing capacity increased. So internal debt and external debt increased. So fiscal policy to some extent to provide sources of funds for different economic activities, we have to give credit to fiscal policy. But the GST, in terms of different rates, 5%, 12%, 18%, even super cess and super GST, 24%. So it's a very different issue in India. But right now, monetary policy, taken a very strong food on our economy, very strong in terms of providing much relief to the economy, than the fiscal policy.
So there's one more last question, I think.
Yes, proceed, sir.
From Mr. Puneet Dubey.
Yes.
He is asking what is the reason of death rate is low in South, especially in Tamil Nadu. which type of model they use?
Well, I'm not a medical expert. I'm not a medical expert to air my opinion, but still, considering my experiences with Tamil Nadu and other southern states for the past 3 months, the first thing is trace, then after tracing, testing, then quarantine, then giving nutritious food to the patients. So the first thing is identifying the coronavirus patients, coronavirus affected people at the right time. Then the immunity factor. Indigenously, traditionally, the South Indians are eating more rice and more vegetables and more non-vegetarian foods. But I'm totally vegetarian. But still, Tamilians and South Indian people are eating more. So they are hardworking and they are having gene, traditional gene imbibed in the system. That also one of the factor why the death rate is very low in Tamil Nadu and other states. But very recently, if you look at it for the past 10 days or so, death rate also has increased in Tamil Nadu. We are having 30 per day, 30. Yesterday it was 38, and the total positive cases 1,900 and odd, and overall more than 46,000. In Chennai alone, we are having more than 30,000 positive cases. Death also very high. Death rate also very high in Chennai. So Chennai alone affected out of 37 districts in Tamil Nadu. Chennai alone greatly, totally affected. Maharashtra first, Delhi, then Chennai. But in Madhya Pradesh also, death rate, total death rate, if you look at it, total deaths, number of deaths, more than 450, I think. But now it has come down. The total positive case 10,000 only in Madhya Pradesh. But in South India, Kerala, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu, for the past 4 months, death
Thank
rate
you.
has been very low thanks to good, medical relief and medical packages and good treatment, patients treatment, etc. And moreover, you all aware that Chennai is considered to be the medical hub of India. Medical hub of India is Chennai. So, entire South India, traditional Siddha medicine is there, homeopathy medicine is there, naturopathy medicine is there, and people are taking different medicine to get rid of coronavirus. That is why the death rate in South India very low when compared to not all North Indian states, but certain North Indian states are having a higher incidence of death rates during the corona period.
Thank you, sir. What to Yashri, please?
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing all that very so well. And yeah, I would also like to thank Gautam, sir, for raising such an important discussion. Now, I request Dr. Naveen Narang, Managing Director, Vishish School of Management, to present sum-up message and formal vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Thank you so much, Yashri. First of all, Bala sir, thank you so much for sparing your time. Honorable Gautam sir, thank you so much for sparing your time and joining us in this webinar. As we all know, we've all heard that, Bala sir say that what is the importance of GDP, because GDP growth rate का क्या importance है, because as he was addressing, I was calculating the compounded rate formula. So the compounding effect of GDP in the overall base value. So let's say you start with 1 lakh rupees today, and then you compound it for let's say quarterly compounded for 20-30 years. The amount is huge. The value that comes out in your hand is huge. So if China is growing at 10% for let's say 20 years, that contributes a very big amount to their GDP. So the values are completely different. अगर आप if you're starting with 1 lakh, at the end of 20 years you might have 20 lakhs in your hand. So that is the power of compounding, and that is the power of growth rate, right? And then again, I would also like to say, look, because this coronavirus has left a deep impact on all of our lives, especially when Balasa was talking about the migrant labor situation, all those pictures of, small kids walking on the street and, people with barefoot, people on the railway tracks, all those pictures come in front of your mind. So this has left a very big impact on our subconscious mind. Our spending habits have changed. We have started to prioritize our expenses. Even the richer households have started to prioritize their expenses. And, so food and your basic necessities have now come at the top half of the expense list. So our spending habits have changed. So these are the things that would which will shape the economy in the coming future. So as Sir said, that agriculture looks promising because our spending habits have also changed, and we have started looking at our food habits more religiously. We've started to look at clean food. We've started to look at organic food and a more serious tone. So these are the sectors which will attract investments. Our luxury needs, spending in hotels, going to the restaurants and eating food, those status symbols have started to occupy a later half of our expenses prioritization. So, this happens, and, post COVID, things will change. The way we look at the economy, the way we look at our expenses, the way we look at our status, everything has changed. So initially a successful marriage was one where you had 1,000, 1,500 people attending the marriage, but now a successful marriage is one where you have only 50 attendees. So this has drastically changed the scenario. Event management has changed. So, these real-term changes that we have to deal with, and Bala sir has, probably compiled them all together in a very understandable and economically, economically appropriate language.
Why it's not clear?
What I'm saying is completely related to my own aspects. What I have. So what he has said is from an economist perspective. So I think he has very well summed it up. And 2 years down the line, probably situations will be more buoyant. We'll have brighter times. We will have more, because traditionally, I guess Gautam sir bhi is baat se agree karenge, even he will agree and Bala sir will agree, because we have been more resilient after a crisis. Whether it be our dealing with wars, or whether it be our dealing with economic meltdowns, we have been more resilient coming forward. So this pandemic will give us a long-term learning. It will teach us that how things that we think were important are not actually that important, and it is your family and the quality time that you spend with your family in the confines of your house is what is more important. And probably the basic necessities of life which we used to take for granted will now be more yesterday I was talking to somebody and I was counseling him probably out of depression. Kal Sushant Singh Rajput incident was, so I was more concerned about people getting into depression. I was calling everybody. So I said, look, we never valued air. We never valued clean oxygen. Now that we have to wear a mask every time, we take out that mask and try to grasp in as much of oxygen. So this crisis will help us evaluate the importance of things that are given to us, things that we used to take for granted. Now these will have a more important and more appreciation in our lifespan. So I would not take a lot much of time, because we've already jumped the bandwagon on time. This has been more than 1.5 hours of exhaustive session. So sir, thank you very much for being so kind. This gives us a platform where you can connect from Chennai. I can sit in my house and connect to this webinar. So this has already given us a platform where we can stay in different localities and different geographical aspects and then connect together. So thank you so much, Bala sir, for connecting and summarizing and probably putting up everything in such a nice language. Over to you, Yashri.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Naveen sir, for all your positive words. I once again thank Dr. Bala Subramaniam, Dr. Gautam, Dr. SMNS Iqbal, Dr. Naveen Narang, and all the dear participants. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.